she waited nearly a decade for him to leave his wife. But instead of a wedding ring, she was met with a bloody hotel room and a silence that has now lasted over 30 years. What really happened to Deborah Taylor? And why did the only man who knew the truth take that secret to his grave? This was supposed to be a new beginning. Deborah Taylor, a 42-year-old grandmother, believed her longtime lover was finally choosing her. He told her he was getting a divorce. He told her they were moving closer. He even bought a gun for them to practice with. But when she vanished from their hotel room, it became clear this wasn't a love story. It was the final act of a devastating lie. By the end of this video, you will see how a story of hope descended into blood and fire, how a bizarre conspiracy note derailed the entire investigation, and why Deborah's family is still waiting for the one answer that matters. Where is she? Deborah Taylor was a woman searching for stability. Born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens, she was a divorced mother of 3 who, by 1994, was lovingly raising her 5-year-old granddaughter in Virginia Beach. For 9 of those years, her life was intertwined with Richard Ablamsky, a married engineer from New Jersey. He was a father of 2, living a carefully constructed double life. He paid Deborah's expenses, took her on vacations, and assured her that one day he would leave his wife. His wife even knew about the affair, yet the fractured marriage remained. Tired of waiting in the shadows, Deborah made a bold move. She packed up her life and moved south to Virginia, a clear signal that she was ready to start fresh, with or without him. But Ablamsky wasn't ready to let go. He drove down from New Jersey every single weekend, keeping the affair alive with renewed promises. Then, in early September 1994, he gave her the news she'd been waiting for. He said he was finally getting a divorce. Better yet, his company was transferring him to the Washington, D.C. area, just a few hours away. For Deborah, it must have felt like the end of a long, painful road. But it was a complete fabrication. Just days earlier, on September 2, 1994, Richard Ablamsky had been fired from his engineering firm for poor work habits and bizarre behavior. His life wasn't coming together. It was falling apart. On September 9th, they checked in to the Marriott Residence Inn in Tysons Corner, Virginia. They were there to plan a future that didn't exist. Within 48 hours, only one of them would walk out alive. On September 10th, Deborah made her last phone call. She spoke to her mother, casually mentioning that she and Richard had spent the day at a firing range with a gun he'd recently bought. There was no hint of fear in her voice. It was the last time her family ever heard from her. That night, she vanished. The stories began immediately, spun by the only person left to tell them, Richard Ablamsky. To Deborah's mother, he claimed Deborah had abruptly left him, hopping into a taxi outside the hotel and disappearing into the night. But to the hotel staff, he said his wife was still staying in the room, and he was just checking out early. His behavior grew more erratic. A few days later, he arrived back in Virginia to pick up Deborah's granddaughter from the babysitter. The woman was shocked by his appearance. He looked terrible, disheveled, unshaven, and his shirt was on backwards. He seemed tired and disoriented, a hollowed-out version of the man she knew. On September 16th, his mask completely crumbled. He phoned 2 of Deborah's friends, asking if they'd heard from her. He spoke of her in the past tense, as if she were already gone. He then threatened to kill himself, claiming he couldn't live without her. That same afternoon, he made good on his dark promise. He drove to the New Jersey home of his former boss, John Dionisio. He broke in, set the ground floor on fire, and walked upstairs. There, in a bedroom, Richard Ablamsky shot himself to death. With the only suspect dead, the truth seemed lost forever. But investigators now had a trail to follow, and it led them right back to that hotel room in Virginia. On September 17th, 1 week after Deborah was last heard from, police entered the Marriott room she had shared with Ablamsky. Because he'd told the staff she was still there, the room hadn't been cleaned. What they found inside was a scene of unmistakable violence. The bedclothes were gone. The mattress was soaked through with blood. More blood was smeared on the walls. It was a silent, brutal testament to what had happened after Deborah's final phone call. The evidence didn't stop there. Investigators examined Ablamsky's Pontiac Grand Prix. Inside the car and in the trunk, they found more of Deborah's blood. The timeline was grimly clear. Ablamsky had killed her in the hotel room, then used his car to transport her body to an unknown location. His lies about the taxi, his disheveled appearance, his suicidal talk, it all snapped into focus. There was no doubt who killed her. But just as the case seemed to be a straightforward murder-suicide, the contents of Ablamsky's suicide note sent the investigation spinning in a completely different direction. Ablamsky's suicide note was not a confession. It was an explosion. In it, he made no mention of Deborah Taylor. Instead, he claimed to be a corporate spy. He wrote that his boss, John Dionisio, had ordered him to steal confidential documents from the New York Port of Authority. These documents, he alleged, helped their company win a multi-million-dollar contract for a rail link between New York City's airports and Manhattan. He claimed he was supposed to be promoted for his criminal actions, but was betrayed and fired instead. The note was his final, bitter revenge. These accusations ignited a firestorm. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office launched a massive corruption probe that lasted for nearly a year, chasing shadows of corporate espionage and political scandal. The story of a missing woman from Virginia was suddenly buried under headlines about a billion-dollar conspiracy in New York. But after a year of digging, the probe found nothing. No evidence, no stolen documents, no proof of any conspiracy. It was all dismissed as the paranoid ramblings of a desperate, unraveling man. And in the end, the note accomplished only one thing. It served as the ultimate diversion. While the world was distracted by a phantom conspiracy, the search for Deborah Taylor went cold. His final act of chaos gave him cover, even in death. Over 30 years later, Deborah Taylor is still officially classified as an endangered missing person. The case against Ablamsky is overwhelmingly clear, but without a body, it remains fundamentally unresolved. Investigators believe the scenario is tragically simple. Ablamsky killed her in the hotel room, placed her body in his car, and disposed of her somewhere along the long, anonymous stretch of highway between Tyson's Corner, Virginia, and his home in New Jersey. Every wooded area, every remote landfill along that route remains a potential unmarked grave. For her family, this is a unique and cruel form of grief. They know who killed her. They know where she spent her final moments, but they have no grave to visit, no place to lay flowers. Deborah's children and the granddaughter she was raising were left with a wound that has never fully healed. The hotel room told a story of blood and betrayal, but it never told the world the ending. And without that ending, Deborah remains missing, not just from a police file, but from the lives of everyone who loved her. The evidence in the hotel room and the car leaves little doubt about what happened to Deborah Taylor. The real question, the one that has haunted investigators and her family for 30 years, is where? Where did Richard Ablamsky take her in the hours or days before he ended his own life? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. This is more than a case. It's the story of a woman whose family still deserves closure. If you believe these stories must be told and these victims must be remembered, please subscribe and turn on notifications.
Every voice helps keep their memory alive. Join us as we explore another case where the silence speaks louder than the evidence.